Hi everyone, in this video we're going to be looking at how we can find the gradient of a line. So when a line has been drawn on a number plane, we can find the gradient of that line is a numerical way of describing the slope of that line. What we mean by slope is how steep it is, and then also in which direction is it going, from left to right, is it going upwards or is it going downwards. The greater the number of the gradient, the bigger the gradient is, that means the steeper that line is. So it's like by having that one number, you can tell a lot about the shape of that line. The way we calculate the gradient is by something we refer to as rise over run. Starting from the left point, and we always start in front of the left of the 2 points we're looking at, we first calculate the rise by seeing how far up or down you went from one point to another. And then once you've done that, you're going to see how far to the right you have gone. We write that as a fraction and then also simplify that fraction if we need to. So looking at this one, for example, we have these 2 points, negative 1, 1 and 1, -5. So if we were to look at this left point, first of all, going from here down to here, I'd see that I started at 1, and I ended up at -5. So that means I started 1 going down to -5. That means I've gone down 6. And because I've gone down, I write this as -6, meaning my rise is -6. Now from here to here, going across, starting at -1 going to +1, there's 2. So my gradient in this case would be, and we represent gradient with a letter m, so m would be -6 over 2. And then we can simplify that as well, of course. -6 divided by 2 equals 3, and -3. So that tells me that the gradient being negative, first of all, tells me that it's going downwards, which we can see with the line. But it also means every time we go down 3, we go across 1, down 3, across 1, down 3, across 1. That describes the slope of the line. So let's look at a few examples of this. So in this first one, starting with the left point, remember we always start with the left point. So starting here and then going up to here, making my way up, first of all, we see that when we're looking at how far up or down we went to try to find the rise, we're looking at the y values. So I started at 8 and I went up to 14. So that means I went up 6 units. So my rise is 6. And once I've done that, then I need to see how far across I went. Again, my left point, I started at 2 and I ended at 5. So because I started at 2 and ended at 5, we can say that I went 3 across. And so therefore my gradient is, the gradient, which we use the lowercase m, is 6 over 3. And of course we can look to simplify that would be 2. So my gradient is 2. Looking at this next one, looking at this point and this point, I want to see how far up I've gone. So starting at 3, I went up to 11. So therefore you can say that I went from 3 to 11, so I went up 8. And then now that I'm here, I go across 2, starting at 2, going across to 4. So I went across 2. So my gradient being rise over run, change the color, m equals 8 over 2, and 8 divided by 2 equals 4. Next one, starting at this, we're looking at these 2 points. In this case, I'm starting at 6 and I'm going down to 2. And as I said previously, if we're going down, that means my rise is -4 because I'm going downwards. However, my run is always positive. That's an important thing to remember. My run is always positive. And I started at 3 and I went to 5. So I've gone across 2. Therefore, my gradient is -4 over 2, which equals -2. And that's that. And then this last example, starting at these 2 points here, I've gone, starting at -7, I went down to -10. So that means I've gone down 3. Remember, because I've gone down, I'd say my run is -3. And then going across, I started at 1 and I went across to 2. So my run is 1, leaving my gradient to be -3 over 1, which we simplify to simply just be -3. Now, some of these gradients might just end up with a fraction as well. It just turned out that all the examples that I've just done or ended up being a whole number. But say, for example, I ended up having my rise was 9 and my run was 6. I could simplify that to be 3 over 2, and we could just leave it as that as well. So it doesn't always need to end up being a whole number. It might end up being a fraction, but generally you do want to leave it as a fraction. Writing it as a decimal, you could leave it as 1.5 as well. Technically, that is correct. However, fractions are the best way to represent gradients. Anyway, hopefully this has been not too difficult. It's really just looking at 2 points, seeing how far up and down you went and how far across you went. Writing that as a fraction. Have fun.